Welcome back, everybody. I'm Edwin.
And I'm Joseph.
And this is
Edwin and Joseph Talks.
So we are on part 3 of our conspiracy video. We've covered the JFK assassinations, 9/11, Area 51, and secret societies. Now, if I were to tell you, mention things like Wings, maybe I'm amazed, the Beatles, what's one of the people that come to your mind?
Paul McCartney.
So what if I told you he didn't have anything to do with any of that? And that in 1966, he actually died in a very horrific and gruesome car crash.
I wouldn't believe it, but what do you got?
So there's a lot of stuff going around, and he's actually not the only celebrity that there's a lot of things around this. There's I mean, it goes as recent as Avril Lavigne, but there's a bunch of people that believe that he died and that there is a imposter, I guess I can say, by the name of Billy Shears that's been living his life since 1966. So, like I said, he had died in a car crash apparently, and the Beatles, the rest of the members, had covered it up. Well, eventually Gil got to them, having known that he's dead and they're putting all this out, and they started hiding clues in different album covers and songs. For instance, in the song Taxman, George Harrison has a line that says, he gives his advice for those that died. That pertains to Paul McCartney. The Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, which is, one of their famous albums, they have a lot of meanings in there about starting a new band with a fictional member by the name of Billy Shears, which that was their way of cluing the name of the person who's being Paul McCartney. John Lennon's A Day in the Life actually has a line that reads, he blew his mind in a car, believed to be talking about the crash, as well as Strawberry Fields, and this is an interesting one. It says that there's a line he mumbles at the end that says, I buried Paul. And they interviewed him about that, and he said that what he actually said was cranberry sauce, which I'm not sure, that doesn't really sound, There's also, if you play A Day in Life backwards, it said that you can hear Lennon say, Paul is dead, miss him, miss him. Now, if you look at the cover to Abbey Road, which again is another popular one, the way they march in the street is said to be in the form of a funeral procession. And if you look at Lennon, he's dressed in all white, which is supposed to represent the clergyman. Ringo is dressed in black. He is supposed to represent the mourner. George has on jeans, and he represents the gravedigger. And then there's Paul. When you look at Paul, he doesn't have any shoes on, which is supposed to be, he's dead, he doesn't need them. And he also kind of walks like out of sync with the rest of them. So, again, this is a subject that's kind of you're not really into, but do you believe that we did lose Paul McCartney back in 1966, and ever since then there's been an imposter?
No. The reason why I believe this is it would be much easier just to replace Paul if he wasn't there. Main reason being it's a band. In 66, they would have been just coming over America, right?
Right. That's when they hit the height of their popularity.
They were just getting to that point where everybody was starting to know them, yes, but they weren't to a point where they are now.
Right.
Like if it was to be like a modern day thing, and they were superstars, maybe. But at the point that all this would have happened, I don't think they were at the point where they'd been like, oh, we need to do a cover-up just to have a Paul. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, I would like to check out the songs and stuff, because, those are all stuff I've heard a lot, and I don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
And I've never played, the one backwards.
A Day in the Life.
Yeah. Now, I'm a Beatles fan. I remember reading about the song "A Day in the Life," and the part that they're talking about, where he blew his mind out in a car, was about a person that killed himself in the newspaper. Like, everything that he was reading is about, what John was reading in a newspaper. And some of it had to do with about a movie that he went and seen, and a lot of stuff with that. I think Paul McCartney's Paul McCartney.
I mean, can you imagine trying to find a doppelganger that not only looks like you but sounds exactly like you? Like, that's kind of that's a little far-fetched.
That, yeah, it seems like a lot of work to replace somebody that, if you weren't there yet, they could have probably easily just replaced. They would have been fine.
Right.
So, what's your next one?
So let's go ahead and jump on the story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the Gospel of Philip, it says that they were married. It's one of the Gospels that came out of the Gnostic area of 1945, I think, is when they were first discovered. So many people believe that if you look at the famous Last Supper picture, there is a woman, I believe it's to his right or left, I can't remember, but that is supposed to be Mary Magdalene. That's supposed to be Jesus' wife. A lot of people actually dispute the authenticity of the Gospels, saying that they were fake, that Jesus was never married. But in there is an exchange between Peter and Mary where Peter tells Mary, the Savior loved you above all other women, which is supposed to be a clue that they were married. There's also a lot of writings in there where Jesus often kissed her, but a lot of people argue that back then that was customary as far as greetings. An example is Judas. He always kissed Judas. So do you believe that this was actually Jesus' wife, or do you just feel like this was one of his more favorite apostles and followers?
I personally believe that he was married to Mary. It would make sense if you just look at how their society was structured. It would make sense for him to be married, the age that he was, and the writings that they had about them. Now, for people that want to say they aren't, I see their complaints, because if you're supposed to have a fully holy person, then you don't want them to be more human. You know what I mean? You wouldn't want them to be like, oh, he has a wife and all that. And also it goes to a point where people don't want to call her an apostle because she's a woman. Back then they had the men are superior to the women.
Right, different rules and stuff back then.
And so there's texts and stuff that I've read about where, there's information that Mary has that they don't have, and she told them, and they didn't like what she was saying, because you're a woman, how dare you speak of this?
Right.
But as for, the actual being married, I personally believe that they were married. It's one thing. You can do a lot of research. You had to do a lot of research in the Apocrypha texts and the Gnostic texts to get more information on that. And out of all those, you just kind of determine yourself, what you believe.
I believe this subject was like the basis for the Da Vinci Code and stuff too, wasn't it? Like, wasn't that the whole...
Possibly. I've seen the movies on those. I can't recall by memory exactly everything that's in it. But, the books themselves I've never read. And I know that they've made, like, Da Vinci Code stuff that has to do nothing with the movies and the books. Because some people actually believe there is a Da Vinci Code. That Da Vinci was trying to hide a bunch of stuff in his paintings and everything, which, he might be. I just watched something recently about all that. And it's one of those subjects that it's because it's in the past and there's so much stuff. I think I brought up to you one time, how much do you think our history would be if we had all the texts and documents and art that got destroyed throughout the years,
yeah.
Because of wars, because of religious wars, because of just hidden secret stuff. Imagine what the Vatican has locked up that they don't allow the public. We already know that they have a library that it's not really secret, but they just don't let anybody go in there.
Yeah.
So, and I also know that there was books that was in the Bible that they got rid of because they thought that it'd be too blasphemous, almost, to have in there. So, it makes you wonder what exactly was in there. But my personal belief, Mary was married to Jesus. Just by reading even the basic Bible canon, she was probably his closest person to him, and it would make sense that your closest person is going to be your wife,
right?
So. Are we done with this one? Or
yeah, I think with that we'll go ahead and conclude part 3. Thank you again for joining us. Do you have anything to close with?
Like, comment, subscribe. Give us your input. What do you think? Also, is there any other more conspiracies you would like to hear about? Again, these are just our thoughts on it. It's not proof. We're not
experts on any of this subject. We're not saying for sure. It's just our personal beliefs on it.
Yeah, I'm not going out. You gotta believe this. So don't look at this and be like, oh, I'm getting outraged because they just said this. No, it's none of that. Just us looking at some conspiracies. So I know we try not to hit like religious stuff or political stuff, but we will talk about some of it. But with that, guys. Thank you, and until next time.